Olof, maybe you can say something about how this all started.
Well, we were commissioned by Danish performance group Hotel Pro Forma to make music for their opera about Charles Darwin. The theme was Darwin and evolution theory, with a focus on biology and geology with a scientific approach. The framework for the piece was a literature list with Darwin's On the Origin of the Species as core, together with contemporary readings of Darwin. The music was going to be 100 minutes, have 3 singers, an opera singer, a pop singer, and an actress. How did being in such powerful environments like the Amazon and Iceland affect your ideas about composition? Well, Janine, being in the Amazon really affected my approach to time and patience in musical composition. Listening for hours to all the different animals at the same time, with their different patterns and rhythms, sometimes following a structure, sometimes random, was really inspiring. This was something we exercised when making the music for the opera. Trying to achieve many parallel events that collide and create unexpected meetings that weren't planned. A crucial goal during our process has been to create change, variation and diversity without hierarchy, as Darwin never used the word evolution, but instead, descent with modification.
When arranging a composition like Variation of Birds, was there any particular idea that you were paying attention to?
Well, Matt, the way the feedback sound is changing is inspired by the way some birds learn their melody. With the vocal melody, we tried to get the feeling of a bird flying around, up and down, left to right.
So that there are 3 sorts of birds which use their wings for more purposes than flying. The steamer has paddles, the penguin has fins.
So, Janine, what are the thoughts behind Shoal Swarm Orchestra?
One of the first ideas I had right in the beginning was the idea to compose pieces of music about a place I'd never been. An environment or land that lived solely in my imagination. Inspired by this, I wanted to create an archive of sounds that were devoid of real animal sounds. I wanted to imitate animals, not record them literally.
You and Olof used a series of traditional orchestral instruments. However, they were played in a very non-traditional method. Can you give examples of this, and what your motivations in doing this were?
You can hear a technique that was developed whilst recording on Iceland. We would mix the percussive instruments together, placing lots of tiny pieces onto a giant drum, and recording the sound of them jumping and rolling around on the drum skins as we hit it with a huge cloth-covered mallet. Or, in other instances, the instruments would be played whilst being pulled through water.
Karin, can you tell me something about the track Colouring of Pigeons?
The title is taken from Charles Darwin's studies of pigeons, a breakthrough of his examinations. It is when he started to discover that genetics transferred within generations. I wanted to have details of the results of his studies in it, lists and piles of details and notes. I thought of the diversity of everything, something we have discussed a lot with Hotel Pro Forma, and a non-hierarchical way of seeing things. Also, a feeling of discovering things for the first time, overwhelming and shaken, but not afraid.
So Karin, concerning the song Annie's Box, why did you choose the death of Darwin's daughter as a subject to examine lyrically? How do you relate this text to Darwin's process? Was it important to you to have a subject as personal as this included in the group of songs? And if so, why?
I think I was struck by his way to describe what his daughter had meant to him, and the love he felt for her. It made me wonder how he saw his own work. What was it to him in comparison to his family? I liked that all his children were allowed to play in his study, that he worked at home with all the noise and chaos around the house, and that his children were even a part of his work. For example, that he kept notebooks of their progressions.
So regarding the lyrics, Matt and Karin, did you approach writing from a scientific, analytical position or a more emotional position? And would you say that you delivered the vocals with the emotion of the species in mind, or your own emotion, imagination? Karin?
I think I delivered the vocals with both the imagination of the emotions of the species and my own emotion. It is very interesting to realise you can create a new imaginary world by just reading and discussing a new subject. When we started in March 2008, there was nothing. It was very scientific. back then there was very little emotion connected to the work.
And Matt, how did you approach the lyrics?
I approach the text from a common ground that both scientific and emotional lyrics and words occupy. The notion that the scientific and rigid way of describing what is present cannot have some emotional weight is more of an old way of seeing words and their relationship to close subjective events. The text, abstracted from Darwin's journals, can be very moving in the way that they communicate what it is that he saw and the pleasures and difficulties it gave him to describe a world outside of his Britain. The words that move people generally are the words that they have been taught and accustomed to respond to in an emotional way. For me, it is more interesting to play with these constructs, and through the use of text in the relation to musical context and word coupling. For example, a song like Geology uses music to represent the movement of lava, while the words are strictly descriptive and non-representational.
It's